marched through the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order, arms. Right, face. Order, arms.
Please repeat. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us bow our heads. Dear God, we thank you for this opportunity to gather together in what I know to be a great country. Father, you allowed these men and women to go on the battlefield and put on the uniform to do your will. We thank you for all of your blessings. And Father God, just touch them right now and have our leaders to do what is right. And all of God's children said amen.
Amen.
Good morning. Thank you for attending today's Veterans Day celebration here at Albany State University. Today, we honor the American service members and their service to our nation. This year, we observe the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I and the beginning of our observation of Veterans Day. As we describe the major conflicts of the last 100 years, we encourage those who have served during these times to please stand and be recognized. For those who are currently standing, you may be seated. In 1970, the United States joined allies of Britain, France, Russia, Italy, and Japan, who were at war with the Central Powers of Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Turkey after German submarines began sinking unarmed ships. The war was declared over on November 11, 1918, at which point the United States had suffered 116,000 service members killed in action and over 200,000 wounded. This was the beginning of our observance of Veterans Day. In 1941, the United States entered World War II. Following Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States began operations in the Pacific and European theaters simultaneously. Germany surrendered in 1945, and Japan surrendered later that same year, following 2 atomic bomb drops on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The United States suffered 407,000 service members killed in action and over 670,000 wounded service members. The Korean War began in 1950 when Communist North Korea, supported by China, invaded non-Communist South Korea. United Nations forces, principally made up of United States service members, fought successfully to protect South Korea. The Korean War was the first armed conflict and the global struggle between democracy and communism called the Cold War. American service members have had continual presence in Korea ever since that time. The Vietnam War. For those who have served, I would appreciate if you stood to be recognized. In 1955, Communist North Vietnam invaded non-communist South Vietnam in an attempt to unify the country and impose communist rule. The United States joined the war on the side of South Vietnam in 1961, but withdrew combat troops in 1973. In 1975, North Vietnam succeeded in taking control of South Vietnam. During that conflict, the United States suffered more than 58,000 service members killed. This preceded a period of relative calm, free from major conflict, until 1991, when the Gulf War began, begun by Iraq invading Kuwait, and a U.S.-led multinational force came to Kuwait's aid and expelled Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein's forces. For those who served in that conflict, we thank you. In 2001, there was an attack on U.S. soil that originated from Afghanistan. The Taliban government had harbored Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda terrorist groups, which were found responsible for the September 11th attacks on the United States. After Afghanistan refused to turn over Osama bin Laden, the United States and UN coalition forces invaded. The Taliban government was ousted, and many terrorist camps in Afghanistan were destroyed. U.S. and NATO troops remain in Afghanistan to support its new government up to this time. For those who have served in that conflict, we appreciate you. The Iraq War. The United States and Great Britain invaded and toppled the government of the dictator Saddam Hussein. Troops remain in Iraq to this day to combat various insurgencies that have formed following Saddam Hussein's defeat. While we have focused on combat actions, Veterans Day does not only acknowledge those who have seen or participated in combat, but all those who have chosen to serve. And for that, we thank everybody who has done so.
Good morning. Thank you for an opportunity to share with you just a little bit about what I think is an incredible legacy that we have at Albany State University as it relates to World War I, and what an honor it is to be alive 100 years after the end of the war. I want to share with you just a little bit of what Dr. Holly said. I think you're going to find this impressive, and I'm quoting him now. It was 1917 that this country went to war against the German government. The morning following the declaration of war by Congress, I called a meeting of the trustees and asked to be relieved that I might volunteer for service. I was told then that my best contribution to my country would be rendered by remaining at my post and assisting other members of my race into joining the service. Every male member of our school faculty volunteered. Most of them were sent to Camp Dodge to be trained as officers and went with the famous 92nd Division and were billeted in front of the Mets when armistice was declared. And Dr. Holly went on to say that the Georgia government and Board of Regents was so impressed with the volunteer spirit and the spirit of the students and the folk in this area that they then decided in 1917 to make this a state school. And at that point, we became Georgia Normal College. And so I always thought about that when I did my research, that I'm not sure how many other schools in the state can say that their whole faculty volunteered and served during World War I. The other thing is, Dr. Holly mentioned the 92nd Division. That was, if I'm incorrect, I'm sure somebody will correct me. That was one of two African American divisions and regiments that fought. The other one is the more famous Hellfighters. Some people call them the Men of Bronze, and they were the most decorated unit during World War I. They were the first to reach the Rhine. How it connects to music and us is they had a band, James B. Stewart Band, which was very, 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 very good. And so it is my pleasure as I close to in some way make the connections between such a momentous thing in our world history 100 years ago and how it relates to us and how it manifested itself into what we call Albany State University. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you for the committee, and I appreciate it. Salute to all the veterans. Thank you.
Good morning. On behalf of Albany State University President Miriam Fedrick, I bring you greetings. She regrets that she was unable to attend today, but requested that I extend a heartfelt thanks to our veteran honorees for their service and devotion to your respective roles. The hour, the day, the week, the year or years could never adequately grant us the time you so richly deserve to be honored. To the servicemen and women, past and current, who work or matriculated and graduated from the hallowed halls of Albany State University, a very special thanks to you. ASU is honored that you made the brave decision to protect the citizens of the world, and honored that you made the wise decision to develop and bestow the skills and training received in service to your roles as students, faculty, and staff of Albany State University. Bask in the tributes that await, and to everyone, please remember, on Veterans Day, we honor all who answered to a service call. Servicemen and women, young or old, fought for freedom, brave and bold. Some have lived while others died, and all of them deserve our pride. We're proud of all of the servicemen and women, kept thinking of red, white, and blue. They fought for us and all of our rights. They fought through many days and nights. And though we may not know each name, we thank all veterans just the same. Thank you.
I'd like to offer greetings on behalf of the mayor and the Albany City Commission. And I want to thank the junior ROTC members before us today. You're the next wave, and as an old Navy veteran and an Army civilian, I appreciate you willing to volunteer to defend our country. And I just want to recognize all the veterans living and present and not present that have risked their lives defending this country, and I thank you for it, and I hope that more of y'all will join up and join the service and follow through with your JROTC training. Thank you.
Salvation
morning to all our honored guests, to our veterans, to the faculty, staff, and students here at Albany State University. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today. He's no stranger to me because he and I were in school together, and I don't want to date myself, but at the same time, I just want to let you know that there's a strong bond between Jimmy and I call him Jimmy, but he tells me a lot of times, Clayton, skip through all that, let's get to the real thing. So, but anyway, James is from the Albany-Doherty County area. His family has given and served greatly here in the Albany and Doherty County communities. Here, and some of his family was here on the staff, faculty of Albany State. He was here in employment at one time, but and Jimmy was in the class of 70. I came out in the class of 72. I was a big fan of his while he was here because he was the student government president at the time, so he kept all the youngsters like myself in check, and he served as a great mentor for all of us. Jimmy was really the man on campus when he was here attending Albany State and for following years. And when you say to a veteran, thank you for your service, truly thank Jimmy for his service because he gave a lot during the Vietnam War. And as a naval aviator, I flew some surveillance flights off the coast of Vietnam, but nothing like Jimmy had to experience or endure when he was coming through. And for follow-on employment, he's a Purple Heart recipient, and that goes without saying. Jimmy is also appointee of a couple of governors for positions on veteran disabilities, and he still serves. He's a wealth of knowledge for all veterans, for Albany State University. He's an icon, and without any further drawing out of this great person, I tell him all the time, he's my man. If I could have him here every day on campus, I would, but we got him here today, Mr. James Blaylock.
To the dais, distinguished guests, veterans, family members of veterans, and friends of veterans. There are three basic reasons that bring people together in gatherings such as this. They are one, to take note of something that has happened, either to celebrate it or to deplore it, but in any case to do so en masse. Two, to take note of something that has not happened, either to try to make it happen or to prevent it from happening. And three, to salute someone we hold responsible for any of the above, and that is the nicest kind of get-together and is the reason for this occasion and why it is so special. This gathering is dedicated to those auspicious patriots, if you will, referred to as veterans. And by our presence here, we are appreciatively saluting them as a reflection of their impact on the sands of destiny. We are saying thanks. Well done, and to you we are eternally grateful. For me, it is always an honor when asked to participate in a Veterans Day program. As is usual, the meaning of Veterans Day with regards to how it came about in this country, who started it, what was to happen about it, and when it became a national holiday is routinely presented through newspapers, radio, and television as November 11th looms on the horizon. I can sort of say what he said, what she said, as a means of saying that they covered a great deal of what I was about to say, but I'll basically reiterate some of what you've heard in what I say in my comments. In case you somehow missed it, I will briefly say that it started on November 11th, 1919, the first anniversary of the end of World War I, marked by the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. It was called Armistice Day, the day a truce was signed for a cessation of hostilities between the Allies of World War I and Germany. What we refer to as World War I lasted from July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918, 100 years ago in a couple of days. It is also known as the First World War or the Great War. It is historically described as a global war that originated in Europe, which led to the mobilization of more than 70 million military personnel. An estimated 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians died as a direct result of that war. It was contemporaneously described as the war to end all wars, which was true until World War II materialized. Nonetheless, Congress passed a resolution in 1926 for the annual observance of Armistice Day, and Armistice Day as a national holiday had its beginning in 1938. President Dwight David Eisenhower signed legislation in 1954 that changed the name of the holiday from Armistice Day to Veterans Day. And since its designation, Veterans Day is commemorated by parades across the nation and by an annual ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknowns in Arlington National Cemetery to include the placement of a wreath by the Commander-in-Chief. In recognition of Veterans Day, we pause to remember those who were called upon to put their lives on the line for their country. We remember not only those who died, but those who lived. For while the giving of one's life is the last full measure of devotion, those who came home from the wars or the availability from being in harm's way through their service deserve a salute and goodwill of their fellow countrymen. In general, most Americans will never serve in the military or step foot on a battlefield, but many feel an obligation to support those who have as a family member or friend. On this very day, Americans are in faraway places representing our best interests. Many will never be the same again. Man's inhumanity to man is an evil that will never be entirely extinct. And those who have known war up close do not forget it. They have forged a fellowship while facing the fire. They bear burdens that only the brave can endure. When I'm privileged to speak in front of an audience, I try to adhere to a philosophy of one of our admired Native American peoples who considered long speeches injurious to both the orator and the audience. For everyone's protection, they have an unwritten rule that every speaker must stand on one foot while addressing his listeners. And as soon as the other foot touches down, the speech is brought to a close. It doesn't matter if the speaker intended it or not, it's over. And by force if necessary. So I'm mindful of that tradition, and even if I do not actually stand on one foot, you will not have to wrestle the podium from me. So with the introductory information given about Veterans Day, one might ask, what else is there to say? And my response is that there's more to say than we have time for on this program. For Veterans Day is a day that is dedicated to more than 28.8 million living persons in the United States that have worn the uniform and served under its flag, 1.9 million of whom are female. Comprehensively, Veterans Day is intended to honor those who served on active, reserve, or guard duty, and those who served during times of peace as well as war. Veterans Day honors those who served 2 years or who served an entire career. Mike Roby, the Commissioner of Georgia's Department of Veterans Service, stated last week that there are more than 740,000 veterans residing in the state of Georgia. These are persons who have in the past served in one of the U.S. Armed Forces branches and is now a civilian. Whereas the percentage of the national population that represents the military is roughly 1%, the percentage of veterans in Dougherty County is more than 8% of the county's population as reported by the last census, and presents a greater opportunity for this community to extend its appreciation. During my year as National Commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, as a Vietnam veteran, I received a number of invitations to visit with Vietnam veterans organizations throughout the state. I was invited and attended an organization's meeting in North Georgia where, quite uniquely for that meeting, all members came dressed in the uniform that they served in. But not only did they wear their uniforms, they also wore their weapons. There were 45s, 38s, 9mm, M14s, M60s, M79s, AR-16s, grenades, bayonets, K-bars, daggers, swords, machetes, sabers, you name it, it was in the room. I'm sure I also saw an M72 Law, a flamethrower, and a set of claymores. But I didn't want to look too hard or have my interest in the weaponry be misunderstood. It became clear after a while that the speaker of the evening was not connecting with the audience. And as you looked around, some in the audience were squirming in their seats, some were nodding, and a couple were actually asleep. This went on for a little while longer when there came a chest-scuffling sound from the back of the room, and a gentleman who had been introduced to me earlier as a sergeant-at-arms stood up, pulled his saber, and started for the podium with all deliberate speed, his demeanor suggesting that he had had all he could take. At that very moment, as if on cue, those who had been squirming sat still, those who were nodding became alert, and those who were awake, or rather asleep, woke up. This called the speaker's attention. He noticed the animated change in the audience, but he knew that the changes were not because of something that he had said. And as he realized that the sergeant of arms was coming in his direction, he naturally became a bit concerned and turned to the post commander, who happened to be on the rostrum with him, and asked unthinkingly over the open microphone, what's going on with this guy with the sword? And the commander answered the speaker in a calm voice to relieve him of his concerns while looking at his program chairman with a jaunty style. He said, "You don't have to worry. He's not after you. He won't harm you. He's after the one that invited and brought you here." Now, I sort of shared that to say this, that if I don't connect this morning, let me ease on out and you get the one that invited and brought me here. When one pontificates in an academic setting such as this, there is an expectation that you will be offered some pearls of wisdom of which time has substantiated as factual and meaningful. I stand before you this morning with reflections of time past that have bearing on the character of this great nation and its keepers. Calvin Coolidge once said that the nation which forgets its defenders will be itself forgotten. The significance of Veterans Day has often becomes confused and distorted with Armed Forces Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, and the like. To many, Veterans Day is just another day. To others, it is a holiday and a day off of work. Many are not sure why it's a holiday, but they'll take it. Those of you here know it as a day of significance, and as sociologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and the clergy will tell you, it serves as a validation of appreciation and positive proof that we are all affected by situational acknowledgement. The poet Maya Angelou is quoted as saying that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Lou Spinelli is a Korean War veteran and resident of Springfield, Virginia. The shuttle bus driver of his senior citizens community described the lasting effect a captain from Fort Belvoir, Virginia, coincidentally made in Louis' life during one of the trips in which he was transported for medical treatment at Fort Belvoir. He tells us that the captain in her Class A uniform was approaching the outpatient clinic at Fort Belvoir's medical facility when she noticed a veteran walking toward her. The old soldier, who was actually Lou Spinelli, was stooped over, grim and walking slowly with great effort, appeared to be much older than his 83 years at the time. The captain was barely able to give Louis a second glance because she observed coming up immediately behind him a senior officer. When it was time for her to render her salute, Louis was only a few paces from her. "Good morning, sir," the captain said, saluting sharply. Louis immediately came to life, totally transformed by the captain's greetings. Thinking that the salute was intended for him, he postured up and returned her salute and exclaimed with vigor, "Good morning, Captain." Meanwhile, the senior officer was in the process of returning the salute when he realized what was going on and stopped in mid-salute, remained silent, exchanged glances with the captain, and continued on his way unobserved by Louis. But Louis continued on his way, but was observed to stride with renewed pride and was described as having more pep in his step, more cut in his strut, more dip in his hip, and less zip of his lip, as he hurriedly informed the awaiting shuttle bus driver and everyone on the bus of what had just occurred, as if he had gone through the twilight zone. A year later, Louis is still transposed youthfully, and by that positive experience, he felt that he was remembered and recognized for his contributions and investment in America. It made him feel so good that he now volunteers as a reader of books for the Association of the Blind and Visually Impaired in his community. Excuse me. On this day in 1966, I was 120 days removed from a Fubai province battlefield, from a cooler in the morgue, from an embalming table, and later from a surgical table at Da Nang Marble Mountain Hospital, and was recuperating at the Naval Hospital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was a surreal experience that still makes me sit up and get up sometime at night after these many years, not mortified or horrified, but reflective of the changes that occurred that redirected my life's goals. My memories of all are capsulized in an out-of-body experience. My mother had written to me about a month earlier to tell me that she was speaking with one of our neighbors by telephone who lived about the distance of 3 city blocks away, when the detail officers arrived at the neighbor's door to deliver that respectful notice from a grateful nation that her son and my friend Sam had died from the wounds received in combat with the Viet Cong in Khe Sanh. I learned after coming home that the same neighbor was speaking to my mother by telephone when the detail officers knocked on my mother's door. And my mother could not muster the strength to answer the knock on the door, whether they came coincidentally with word about me based on my time in the morgue, or to get directions to another residence the officers did not return later. With that in mind, and because it is reflected on so few calendars and given so little mention in print on the airwaves, I'll mention a key day that has a relative association with Veterans Day, or comes to mind in a subliminal way. And that day is Gold Star Mother's Day. It is the last Sunday in the month of September, and it is in honor of mothers who have lost a son or daughter in the defense of our nation and freedom. A holiday that has been observed each year since 1936 by a presidential proclamation. Gold Star Mother's Day was born from the practice of hanging service flags on homes and businesses to represent each living active duty service member participating in the period of war. And as service members were killed in combat, a gold star was superimposed over the blue star to honor the person for his or her ultimate sacrifice to the country. Being in the military is serious business, although not in the beginning for some, as there is an occasional bit of humor in the daily activities that are appreciated for the humility it brings forth, at least to some. I recall a situation that took place at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. This was during a real-time hazardous weather flying exercise involving 12 rotary wing aircraft in a low ceiling, rain with gusting winds environment that required hover and touch-and-go elements to be performed. These were challenging tasks and conditions, to say the least, for student pilots. After a few aircraft objectively cycled through the exercise, there was a crisp, unidentified voice on the radio that said, "I am some kind of stupid to be out here flying in this kind of crap following the same plan of some joker who's sitting in the comfort of an observation tower to see if I will crash and wash out." Immediately there was a responding radio message stating, "Pilot on that last transmission, identify yourself." Of course, nothing was said. "Pilot on that last transmission, this is Colonel Hendry, identify yourself now." And after about 5 seconds of radio silence, which seemed much longer, someone in an Inspector Clouseau voice came on the phone on the radio and said he was stupid, not crazy. "Sir?" And all aircraft were instructed to immediately return to base for debriefing. The offending student pilot fortunately was not discovered, but all lost their weekend to continued training. It is fitting and proper that we all make a conscientious effort to say thank you to those who have served and to those who here today continue to do so. To active duty, reserve, and guard members, we serve Your service is appreciated, as are you, more than you can know. As we see in the story of Lou Spinelli coming out of the post-clinic, the importance of being recognized and appreciated, even if it happens to be on just one occasion, goes a long way. It adds acknowledged value to the contributed services that one has invested in his country. Patriotism is easy to understand in America. It means looking out for your country. Inherent in those words, of course, are the responsibility that the country has in looking out for its veterans. We sometimes overlook the sacrifices of those who came before us and after us. But remembering has a profound effect. And if you are the remembered, the impact of being remembered is even more than profound. Chris Curry, an Iraqi-Afghanistan veteran who resides in Middle Georgia, was recently medically discharged from the Army, where she served as a logistician. During her 6 years of active duty, she experienced 4 tours in Afghanistan and was awarded 2 Purple Heart medals. Her last Purple Heart was conveyed subsequent to an IED encounter resulting in a TBI and consequent discharge. Although highly intelligent and functional, a stutter developed from her last injury has negatively impacted hopeful interviews and had precluded her of achieving viable, self-worthy employment. After many lip-serving sessions, she withdrew from public engagements and developed depressive ideations. Such disappointments when re-engaging with the homeland too often leads to darker places. These darker places are too many and can very often be avoided with the help of just human intervention. A quick hello or thank you for your service can mean another day, and another day can add vision to finding another way to get back on track. And in this case, after evaluative counseling, she is now a process forensic auditor intern. Being remembered as one who served in America's military is often the full extent of many a veteran's legacy and is shared, unfortunately, only in the obituary at their interment. We should let them know they are remembered while they can still hear us say, thank you. If there's one takeaway message that I would leave with you, it would be this. If you are enjoying your freedom, thank a veteran. There are many among you who are in or will soon be in someday a position to hire a veteran who is seeking employment. The relationship between employment, suicides, drug abuse, spousal or child abuse, and divorce is indisputable. When the opportunity presents itself, do not disregard that while military service may have been the candidate's first full-time job for various reasons, a plethora of skills, experiences, and occupations are acquired through that service. They have made an investment in your future as a resource while subjecting themselves to harm's way, and thereby having earned a reciprocal consideration. I would urge you to prop up the undergirdings of what make a free society possible. I would urge you to give back what a veteran has given forward. So when I'm asked why I set aside a day in recognition of veterans, my first response is because they deserve it. From those who have stood guard in peacetime to those who have seen the terrors of inhumanity of combat and to those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, our veterans have been there for America. They stepped up and bravely answered the country's call. They fought tyranny, communism, terrorism, and through it all they had our backs. They have sacrificed so much for the beneficiaries of their strife to think about it so little. They are the inseparable link between the liberties of freedom we enjoy every day. In the Gospel of John 15:13 it is written, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." The war that ended on November 11, 1918, a century ago as it turns out, was not the war that ends all wars as prophesied. There have been many wars that follow and likely more to come. We owe veterans living as well as those dead a requited debt. We owe them our endless gratitude. We owe them our everlasting respect. We should have their back. Fly Old Glory when you can. Give all of our past and present military personnel a comforting hand. They have earned it. Thank you for your attention and for allowing me to be a part of your Veterans Day program and for remembering and thanking those who served. May God bless G.I. Jane and G.I. Joe by adorning them with the spirit, virtues, and values that sustains us as a nation from sea to shining sea. May God bless all veterans whose service and sacrifice validates that freedom is not free. May God bless all first responders. May God bless you, and may God bless America.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Ken Trimment, and I've had the privilege and the honor to serve in the Air Force for to have served in the Air Force for over 2 decades. And right now it's really nice to see so many young faces who are in the uniforms. And we're going to have a little bit of fun with you right now. Is that okay? Okay, now we're going to play, we're going to honor those who have served, who sit in the audience, with playing the Armed Forces service songs in the order of seniority. Do y'all know what that is? Okay, first we're going to play the Army. Anybody in the Army in the audience? Okay, got a few. Okay, now this is a contentious part of right here. The Marines. U.S. Navy. It was a part of the Armed Services, but now it's Department of Transportation, or Homeland Security. The Coast Guard, the National Coast Guard. We're going to play the song anyway. And then my favorite, the United States Air Force. So when we play these trivia, when we play these songs, whether you were served in that service or not, or if you just like the song, you all know what to do, right? Right? Okay, we'll see. Okay, here we go. The United States Army. U.S. Navy. The U.S. Coast Guard.
Good morning again. These acknowledgments are to appreciate the support we receive from all of you to make this Veterans Day program a success. First of all, I would like to thank the members of our community, local government, our local school system, and our guests of honor for your presence at this event. Next, our sincere thanks goes to the organizing committee of this event, who are the main driving force behind getting this event organized and who are instrumental in identifying and planning the aspects of this event. A lot of us took up our various responsibilities, getting more volunteers to help out and ensure the timely implementation of this program. Next, we would like to thank all of our volunteers who may not have been in the organized committee, but who supported today's activities and were equally responsible for bringing it to be a success. We greatly appreciate your hard work in helping in this event without any reservation. And finally, with great honor and respect, we wish to thank all of our veterans, past and present, for your service to this great nation and to the world. The sacrifices that you have made to ensure that we have the freedom we enjoy today will never be forgotten and will always be honored. Thank you.
At this time in our program, we'd like to observe a moment of silence for those veterans and citizens who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you very much.